want to show the audience. So I posted this. To me, this is the kind of stuff that it's just, and the jury has seen this too, because this was verified in courts. They read through these different messages. This is the kind of thing that is such a head scratcher to me. He says to her, "I miss you already." And she says, "Me too." And then he says, "When do you want to freak off? LOL." And she says, "LOL, I'm just going to change. I'm always ready to freak off. LOL. Then he says, "You tell me the day you choose." And then she says, "It can be whenever." He says, "Name the night." Okay. Then he says, I think, "Name the night" again. Or maybe it was cut that way. I'm not sure. But anyway, says, "Name the night." Okay, and then she says, "I feel like the weekend. A Friday night would be best, so we'd want to recover for the work week. This upcoming weekend is the only one I have until the 28th. He says, "Okay, I'm on it." She says, "LOL, but if you can't, we can always do it during the week. You know that doesn't matter to me." Then he says, "Friday, I wish I could get Jules here." And she says, "LOL, maybe we could. I don't know him that well." So we've got this. And again, and then there are other messages. Apparently there was a message in which she says, "I wish we could," he's something about, "This is not, I wish this wasn't the last freak off. I wish it was the first freak off." And just all of these different messages showing enthusiasm for this.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
And that's why I think that the jury is going to base their opinions on these text messages, which there was a couple of them referenced where she says this, because the jury instruction in the end is ultimately going to say something like, this is what I think, that it'll probably have some kind of verbiage of whether or not there's reasonable doubt, or did the prosecution prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there was no consent given, or something in that way. And there is reasonable doubt that there was, this maybe blurry or muddy waters of whether she gave consent to or not. So if I was on the jury and I saw the tangible evidence or her testimony, because there was so many holes in her testimony, I would give more weight to the text messages, in my opinion, because that was in real time. And this is just, her memory of what happened.
Right. Well, that's the thing. So one of the accounts that you and I follow on Twitter X for great coverage of this trial, and I think very, very fair, Lawyered Up, talked about how the one part of Cassie's testimony that was especially strong was when she claimed that at Cannes, when they were at the Cannes Film Festival, sometime around there, that Sean Combs played a video of her in one of the prior freak-offs, and she claims that he played this to her as a threat that if she did not, the prosecutor says, "On the way back from Cannes, what did Sean do? Ventura, he played a video of me having sex with an escort." Prosecutor says, "What did he say he'd do?" Ventura says, "He'd release it."
Okay, so
When
maybe
you got to New York, what did Sean ask for? Okay, and then she says, when you got to New York, what did Sean ask for? And Ventura answers, "A freak off, or he'd release it." But again, we're getting this, and I think this point you were making, this is testimony. This is not hard evidence of anything. All we've got with is hard in terms of hard evidence is text showing consensuality, right?
Well, yeah, her testimony is evidence, but when the jury gets instructed to with the impeaching the witness, where there were portions of her testimony that was contradictory, or they're instructed to either believe everything she said, believe parts of what she said, or believe nothing. And I do believe, and again, it'll come up to the transcripts because we don't know exactly what was said, but I do believe at the end there, it was really good for the defense where they got her on the settlement with the Intercontinental Hotel, where it seemed like she said she hadn't gotten paid and then said she had gotten paid. And we'd have to look at the transcript to see if that was for sure impeachment. But I felt like there was several other portions where she was impeached, where she said one thing, in the beginning of her testimony, she said she did not want to do the freak offs at all. And then it comes out later on that there's text messages saying, and I know that she said, "Oh, well, that's just words at that point." And that does go towards, the Stockholm or the trauma bonding stuff, that at that point she was just so deep into it. She was just saying whatever. But again, the jury's going to have to decide what parts of her testimony they believe. And if there's so many holes in it, they may not believe any of it and think that it's reasonable doubt.
Right, exactly. I think that reasonable doubt is so important here. And I have to feel like, unless things change in this in trial, if this is going to be how the prosecution's case proceeds, where we have a number of witnesses attesting to the fact that Sean Combs could be violent and that he procured escorts for his own personal enjoyment. I think that if that's as far as this thing goes, if that's as much as the prosecutors are willing to prove, I think that there are going to be a lot of people by the end of this trial who, no matter how much they hate Diddy for the domestic violence stuff, are going to be sort of scratching their heads, because this thing was sold to us, and I say sold by the media in a way, and even by people on social media fanning the flames with completely baseless gossip, and then people like Tony Busby, that shady lawyer, filing all of these lawsuits that just, I think a lot of them just have complete crazy BS or just money grabs. The point is, all of these different people really promoted this idea that Diddy, that Sean Combs was an Epstein, and that he was doing things like surveilling people without their knowledge and drugging people and assaulting minors and so forth. And look, the trial may still show that, but this is their star witness, Cassie Ventura was. And this is something that Mark Agnifilo, Sean Combs' attorney, said the other day. He said, the judge, the reason why we're having to take so long with this witness, crossing this witness, is because this is the strongest, basically the strongest part of the state's case against us, we think. Now, that may prove to not be true, but I'm just thinking to myself, if Cassie Ventura was the strongest part of the state's case, then I don't know about this. I think a lot of people are going to catch on here that there is something wrong. And like you said, they were able to, it has been, the defense was able to expose ways in which it seems like she was not being truthful, like with the Intercontinental, the 10 million that she got, not initially wanting to concede what was really that going on there. And then there, honestly, CJ, there were just jaw-dropping details about her conduct over the course of this relationship that call her character into question. And I'm not sure what you thought of this, but the revelation in court that after she says Sean Combs raped her, and again, this is her testimony, there's no proof of this in text or anything, but after she says this happened, then she went back to him and had consensual sex with him and FaceTimed with her now husband that she was cheating on with Sean Combs. I mean, it all can seem sordid and toxic. And I just want to say one more thing. I thought that one of the most negative revelations in this for Cassie was when she said that she initiated violence against Sean Combs. She said that he was jealous of her, I guess, talking to a producer one night. They were out at a party or after a party, and she'd been talking to someone, and he was jealous, I guess, and he called her a slut. And she said in her testimony that she hit him in the face. And I'm not saying that her initiating violence then makes it okay for him to do the horrible things that, like, we saw him doing in that hotel video, but the jury may come to the conclusion that instead of this being a situation where you have this one woman who is just completely just like under this man's thumb and was basically his slave, instead they may come to the conclusion that this thing was just a toxic mess, and you had aggressive, violent people on both sides cheating and hitting each other and doing all kinds of shit. I don't know. So
Yeah.
I guess that's all I've said. Go on.
And just to wrap it all up, exactly what you're saying is one of the things that I felt was really detrimental to the prosecution's case, piggybacking off of what you said, where she had consensual sex after the fact that, she alleges that she was raped, is that she also said that she stayed friends with him throughout the years. Where
Right.
he was saying that, she didn't hate him. I believe there was a text saying, I don't hate you. And then she also throughout her testimony kept saying, well, I loved him. Well, there was aspects that I saw of him where I loved him. And to me, that planted seeds in the jury as to, a lot of jury members may come off emotional where they're like, oh my God, this guy's so bad. But it kind of backtracks that feeling. Like if she doesn't even hate him after he did all this to her, if she still loved him, then why do I have these angry feelings? That's at least how I felt when when I read that text message where she said, "I still don't hate him," because I couldn't fathom the fact that all of this trauma happened to her, and yet she still was saying that on the stand. And it felt like she wasn't there. She said she was there to give justice to the victims, but a lot of her testimony was, I didn't want to be humiliated, things like that, where to me it just seemed like it was, she didn't want to be outed for doing these things. It wasn't about having this voice for everyone else. It was more about herself. Um, and she wasn't really holding herself accountable for the things that, her part in all of it.
Right. And we talked about that to an extent in our last video too. If people are curious, they should go back and watch the last one that we did about her testimony, where we talked about this idea, this sort of gray area here when we talk about responsibility, and that it seems like the prosecution is trying to make us feel like this woman had no responsibility, when instead now we see all these texts and indicating that she was not only very involved, but at least at least seemingly enthusiastic. And to that end, I just want to say, her involvement, I have no doubt in my mind that the feds threatened her with her own involvement in this, and that is part of the reason why she is testifying, because that is how the feds work. And I tweeted this week that I blame the feds for putting her
Mhm.
through this. She is hugely pregnant. She could have her baby any day. I did not like the sight, even in the sketch art, of this very pregnant a woman having to deal with not only the stress of this testimony, but of, yes, the criticism that she's going to get from people like me, because this is serious business and a guy's life is on the line, and this is how it is. But it's the government doing this, and this is what they do, people, in situations like this. When we have when the government has someone in their sights and they want to bring splashy federal charges against that person and make precedent and stuff. James Comey's daughter, I'm not trying to get to the political thing, but James Comey's daughter is heading up this prosecution, big part of this prosecution. Anyway, my point is, they use carrot and stick, and the carrot is immunity and the stick is prosecution. And I guarantee you that Cassie, when she filed this lawsuit against Combs, she was trying to get a payout and nothing else. And y'all, we know that she had been pestering Combs for months behind the scenes, telling him that she was writing a book. She had written a book, and she was wanting him to read the book, and
And that's what makes me think she didn't want justice, because
right,
it was more about her. And I think she says it in the Inner City Press transcript, that says that she just felt like she needed a payout for what she had gone through. And so the fact that she never went with all this stuff to the Fed, so it didn't continue
right,
to happen to anybody else, because the federal case, according to what I've seen, is from the Cassie days all the way up to 2023. So, her not speaking up, could have, if it is true that this was happening,
right.
was
I
it
know your
happening
point.
to other people because she didn't speak up, because she wanted the book or whatever it was. So that's what I'm talking about, where there's inconsistencies. As much as I do feel for the abuse that she went through, and I'm not saying that she's not believable and that stuff may have happened to her, it's hard to fathom how her actions after the fact. And to me, it seemed like it was almost like reverse blackmail, where she says, oh, he was going to release this video of me at Cannes, and then now you're hearing this, well, I'm going to publish this book unless you pay me,
Right,
and I'm going to ruin your reputation. So
right.
it's like, was she learning from Sean Combs and Diddy? And you hear that video as well, where she was threatening the person who had a video of her.
Yeah, I'm gonna fucking
um,
kill you, right?
yeah, and so it was
Basically.
like, did she start to learn from him the mafia behavior, and then she try to turn it on him? So that's why it's like, it's so muddy, that if I were on the jury, I would just, that testimony for me is gone now. Like, that's the way it's like, there's too much inconsistencies. You can't make up your mind one way or the other. I would be focusing on other witnesses